Hey guys, to help run the forums, host the website, and travel, we've introduced a universal service fee for in-depth coverage, including this video. My goal is to be unbiased and transparent. It's a privilege to serve you. This is not an endorsement. Let's get into it. Hey guys, it's a beautiful day. We're at Hillcrest Park in Fullerton. We got this beautiful water fountain behind us, and then some school kids are on a field trip up there having fun. I was up there earlier taking the photos and looking at all this really awesome chalk artwork. And check this out, we've got a couple of really awesome bikes here, and a couple because they're kind of like the step-through version and the high-step version, even though they're named differently. So this is the Geneva 500 MX. The MX designates mid-drive motor from Dapu. And then over here we have the Zurich 500 MX. Basically the same bike. Same battery and everything, but high step. The frame's slightly different. If you're someone who's a bit taller or you want that more masculine look, you could go with this bike and you're gonna get a little bit more frame stiffness. But I have to say, this step-through design with this really thick down tube and then that kind of reinforced top tube there, I wasn't experiencing a lot of frame flex. And I think part of that is because the weight is low and center on the frame like this. That just keeps the weight low. It keeps the bike stable. It allows you to turn effectively, and it frees up this rear rack for a full 25 kilograms or roughly 55 pounds of weight. So you could have a trunk bag, you could have panniers. This is standard gauge tubing. It is a bolt-on rack, so you see all these bolts. Over time, you want to make sure that those stay tight, but there's a lot of adjustability here. You can see that you can raise it up or lower it down. You've got these plastic fenders, and at first I was like, well, it's not connected to the rack. I have seen other fenders that connect right there. It's another support point, but they actually feel really solid. They haven't been rattling around a whole lot. They aren't touching the tire. You'll notice that there isn't like a length adjustment going on down there, and it's pretty much just like a bolt-on right there with those two screws. So they feel very, very solid, and that's important to me, especially if you're doing a little bit of a bumpy riding. Maybe you're going off-road for a minute. You can see the tires here got a little bit dusty because we were up on the dirt paths cruising all around. I really like this suspension fork. I estimated roughly 63 millimeters of travel. We might only be getting about 40 right now because I'm not a super heavy guy, but it has hydraulic lockout. I tested this in multiple positions, so it's really loose and kind of springy in the full open, and then almost completely locked out in that speed lock position. Under this cap, we have preload adjust, so you can preload that spring if you're someone who weighs a little bit more. That's really nice. You know, this is a really sleek, it's kind of a minimalist suspension fork, and they've got it paint matched. This is an SR Suntorque fork, by the way, but they've taken off all the decals. And I just love this red. They've got this bright scarlet red, glossy, nicely done on these decals and stuff. It's not too busy, it's not too flashy. This is just a beautiful looking bike in my opinion, and you know, they've also got the colors tied into that plastic chain cover right here, and you've got a clear section, kind of a smoked plastic, so you could see if that chain was coming off track. Shouldn't be a huge problem, again, unless you're really going off-road pretty fast and hard. 40, I think it was 44 tooth, right, on that chainring, steel chainring up front. I was doing all the specs with the team back at the shop. We've got Steve on the end. This is Wayne Hui, is that right? Yeah, the founder of EG.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. And then, of course, Sam at the Electric Bicycle Center here in Fullerton.
Good to see you guys today.
You know, it's a fun day to get out for a ride, and all four of us were able to bring over all four models. You can see there's the glossy black, and then we have this like bluish gray going on over there, more of a satin as well as red in the high step. A lot of good options for these two bikes that really overlap nicely. $25.99. And Sam, do you remember the weight on this? It was like
65?
Yeah, 65 pounds. It's, you know, it's a little bit heavier in some ways, because it has the fenders, it has the rack, it has integrated lights, it has that suspension fork, and the mid-drive and the high-capacity battery pack. So, you know, 14 amp hour, was that right? 48 volt?
Yeah, but it's real stable, too, when you're riding the bike. The size of the tires and the weight of the bike makes it a really stable ride.
Yeah, it's back to that, like, mid-frame battery position, and it just blends in. You almost look at these, and they don't quite look like e-bikes at first glance. There are some black, you know, highlights going on here, whether it's the fenders, these nice black rims, and then the motor casing here. And we'll go on the other side. This is the Dapu, what is it, MD250? Is that right, Wayne? So Wayne and I were having a conversation because the MD250 came out a year or two ago, and you said that this is sort of an updated version, right?
This is the second generation.
Second generation, and it's really smooth and quiet. It offers like 110-ish Newton meters of torque, which is definitely on the higher end, but it's not super loud, and it uses a standard size chainring versus some of the older motors from Bosch. They've got that tiny chainring that would spin 2.5 revolutions per crank arm revolution. That's like a reduction gear system, and it meant you couldn't swap the chainring out. It meant you heard a little bit more like whirring sound, but it started and stopped really quickly, and it brought the chain closer to the chain derailleur. I'm kind of talking about the evolution of mid-drive systems, and being able to have that standard size chainring really makes a difference, and it kind of rounds this whole bike out. So in the rear here, I think we've got 13 to 32 tooth. This is an 8-speed drivetrain with trigger shifters, only one way on the high lever, but 3 shifts on the low lever. I like how this is more traditional for me. It's not that big, kind of cheaper thumb shifter like you see on some other bikes. Same thing with the brakes. Look at these. These are Tektro hydraulic disc, 3-finger levers with adjustable reach. They also have motor inhibitors and brake light activation. So if I turn on the bike right now, boots up for a second, gives us some diagnostics, and then when I pull the brake lever, look at that. So you can override the motor. If you're in pedal assist and you pull the brakes, it's immediately going to cut out, and whether you've got the lights on or not, you get that nice brake light activation. We have a trigger throttle here, and then pedal assist that is measuring, I believe it's, rear wheel speed. You can see that there's a magnet right here and a little sensor down there on the right chainstay, as well as pedal cadence and pedal torque. Torque is a really strong signal on this motor. So if you're not pushing very hard, the motor's, even in the highest level of assist, which is 5, the motor's not gonna feel out of control. And then as soon as you really put some effort into it, it zips right up. So you can take this bike to 20 miles per hour, 32 kilometers per hour with throttle only, and then all the way up to roughly 28 miles per hour with pedal assist, which is roughly 45 kilometers per hour. So this is technically a speed pedelec with throttle override. The throttle gives you full power on all levels of pedal assist, which is awesome. That's the way to do it, even on 0. So you could be just scooting along, hanging out, and then zip right up to speed, and you don't have to pedal. I appreciate that, and sometimes it's nice, whether you're walking through the grass or whatever. Of course, it does have walk mode as well. This bike kind of has everything. And in a way, EG for me has been sort of a value brand. The pricing on this, you have another bike called the Athens that's been really popular, and do you know how much that one costs? MSRP?
That one's $12.99.
$12.99. So a lot of people, they're like, wow, that's a really affordable bike, especially when you see it in a bike shop like Sam's.
Yeah, can I address something really quick too?
Please.
There's a lot of customers that walk in the shop and they have certain criteria, looking online, maybe at EBR, and they're like, I want a mid-drive and it's got to have a throttle. And I'm like, well, that just wipes out like half the whole store, because Bosch doesn't have throttle.
Yeah.
Rosa doesn't have throttle, Shimano doesn't have throttle, nor does Yamaha. So there's very few bikes that you can get in a mid-drive that have throttle override with pedal assist.
That's a great point. That's a really good point, Sam. I think, I think about like the combination of accessories that people might want already built onto the bike, the comfort that this bike offers. By the way, these are 700C, or roughly 28-inch tires by 1.75, so they're a good like hybrid and fairly thick here. I think were these Kendas we were looking at?
Yeah, they're Kenda 700C by 45.
Okay, cool. I feel like there's a little room for improvement. They don't have like the reflective sidewall stripes. They don't have puncture resistant, but it's a fairly standard tire size, so you could upgrade that yourself later. And they do have 13 gauge spokes and 12 gauge spokes, so extra thick, 36 hole. I feel like trying to get that price point right, the $25.99, and also have some room for dealer margin is important, because these guys assemble it and they support it for you. How long have you been carrying EG, Sam?
Oh man, it's probably been 7 or 8 years now, I believe.
That's quite a while, and we're in 2019 right now, so I don't know, 2011, 2012, something like that. Am I doing the math
maybe.
Right?
Sounds about right.
Something like that. And how long have you guys been in business, Wayne?
Since 2005.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, that's quite a while. You've really been around. And when did you introduce this bike? Is this like 2018?
This is all new this year, 2019.
2019?
Yes.
Whoa, staying up to date.
Yep.
I appreciate the opportunity to look at these up close. And again, thanks to Sam's shop. I want to call out some of the other things that really stood out to me while I was looking at this. We've got these aluminum alloy platform pedals. They're not plastic, so they're a little bit sturdier, you know, if you do have a pedal strike or something, but they've got that rubber tread. So if you slip off, you're not going to get all these scars on your shins like I have from riding mountain bikes. I talked about that chain cover. That's going to keep your skirt or your pants from getting snagged and greasy. I love that they've got bottle cage bosses right here, just in case you want to put a folding lock or maybe a water bottle. And they've got that on both models. We've got an adjustable length kickstand in the rear. It stays clear of that pedal, so sometimes when you're walking a bike out of your garage like this, like backwards, see how that pedal goes backwards? You can end up with pedal lock. So I love that they've really done that right. Large 180 millimeter rotors for both of those disc brakes, so you get good smooth stopping power. You don't have to have really strong hands, and because you can adjust that reach, you can bring these in. Comfortable. These are faux leather, ergonomic, stitched grips. They match the saddle. This is a really comfortable saddle. Slightly wider, but a narrower nose, so you're not going to get chafing on your thighs when you pedal. 27.2 millimeters on that seat post, so you could swap it out with a suspension seat post. Do you do that a lot, Sam? Do people?
All the time. We even do it before we sell the bikes. The first impression is really important, and when you get a nice seat post on there, we're lately selling a lot of the SR Suntour NCX seat posts. They sell for about $125, and you also have competitors from Thudbuster as well as Body Float. Okay, good to know. So you can turn this into kind of that full suspension feel. Other areas to keep an eye on are the lights. So we have a really nice blaze light with an alloy casing. It's very bright and it points where you steer. It is mounted to the arch on the suspension fork, and that's the part that moves, so it could bounce a little bit more, but at least being aluminum and being a little bit sturdier and even having that rubber washer down there, it's not going to get bumped out of position. I think that's like knurled on the that lower portion of metal bracket, so it shouldn't get bumped out of place. It's pretty good. You know, sometimes I like to have the light high and up on the bars, and then it wouldn't be bouncing around as much, but then the cables get crowded, especially when you have a throttle and you have those motor inhibitors. The rear light, this is Spaninga, I think it's Lanero. Let's check this out. I'm turning this back on, tapping the power button here. That activates the lights. You can see that, yeah, it is Spaninga Laneo. 2 LEDs on that with a nice big reflective surface. It's tucked in below the rack, so if the bike tips over or something, it should be fairly well protected. And then the pannier blockers on the side. I didn't see a slap guard on that right chainstay, which is an area, you know, it's like you could put a little piece of box tape or something there to keep that nice, because the paint is so nice, but it's clearly like multiple coats here and maybe even an extra coat of glossy. So this seems like one of the higher quality paint jobs I've seen on an e-bike. And then again, I talked about the fenders before. Plastic's very durable, so it can kind of get bumped. It's not going to scratch or rust the way that alloy or steel might. And then with the battery, I like that the charging port is up high, because sometimes, you know, you're bending way down low, or these crank arms can go right next to the charging port. This one's way up high, so it's very easy to reach and deal with. And then on this side, we have a charge level indicator with 4 dots, so you get like a 25% increments. I have the charger right there. There it is. This is a pretty standard charger, ST lithium ion, 2.5 amps, so it's going to be a little bit faster. Probably around 6 hours for a full charge on this, and it's light enough at 1.4 pounds. You can put it in a little trunk bag or a backpack, take it along with you. I also want to call out that a lot of these cables are internally routed on this frame, and that's part of what makes it look so clean and beautiful. You can see them coming out of here, going back to that rear light, and it also has kind of a daylight sensor. And there's a spring latch on the rack. Adjustable angle stem. This is a cheaper part in my opinion. I mean, it's one of the pieces that over time, if you're going on really bumpy terrain, you want to make sure you keep those bolts tight, or it could start to strip the teeth in there. -10 to 40 degrees on that. Nice swept back bar, but it's not so big. I mean, it's not quite a cruiser. It's a very comfortable city commuter, something you could ride around the neighborhood and feel good about, something that's going to get great range because of the mid-drive. It's a little bit more efficient because it relies on the gears that you shift versus a hub motor, which it doesn't rely on any gears. It's just geared for one optimal speed. It's up to you in this case to climb more efficiently by shifting to a low gear, or get those top speeds, which again, 28 miles per hour. I did that on the way over here. It felt very good, and the motor was really quiet. I was very impressed with that overall, but there's no shift detection on this drive system. So when you shift gears, ease off a little bit, and maybe, you know, whether you're using the throttle or you're pedaling, just ease off, and then it's going to give that drivetrain a little bit
easier time to switch gears. You're not going to bend the teeth on the, you know, the cassette and maybe, you know, lose the chain as easily. That's just kind of goes for any e-bike with a mid-drive motor. There's a little bit more, you know, strain on the chain as a result. Shimano Alivio, that's a decent derailleur. It's definitely a few steps up from entry in the Shimano component group set. And you can kind of see that, just the way that it looks and everything. There's a barrel adjuster here, so you can turn to the left over time as you get cable stretch. If the shifting isn't quite right, you don't even need any tools. You can do that yourself. I think that's a pretty good overview from me. Sam, you know, you sell these bikes. Why do you sell them? What do you like about them?
Well, let's start from the beginning. The EG brand with Wayne is like a family-ran business. When I go to see him at Interbike, I see his dad there, I see his sisters there, and he just has a different level. When you're dealing with certain companies, you're dealing with employees, and they change employees, and you got to start all over. I've built a rapport with this guy over the last 8 years, and he's a great guy to deal with. I normally do not carry bikes from the East Coast. He's based out of the Boston area, and this is one of the few brands that I will get all the way across country because this guy is awesome right here.
Oh, good call.
Thank you very much, Sam.
Yeah, you're clear. You know, we've been around for a while. I've seen you at Interbike when they had Interbike, and it was neat. You had a big booth and a whole bunch of different products. Clearly working hard on this bike. Is there anything you feel like that they could improve upon? This is a review. You know, I'm trying to give people some feedback. I mentioned the non-reflective, non-puncture protected tires.
So people have to be aware when they're riding a mid-drive bike, if it doesn't have shift detection, they need to be a little bit more cautious when they're shifting.
Yeah.
I noticed that myself when climbing the hill. I was trying to catch you, and I was like, I gotta catch Court, and I shifted while I was still pedaling hard, and it clunked hard. So
yeah.
As you ride your bike, you're gonna get that rapport, and you're gonna know exactly what you need to do. And that's something to be aware of when riding this style of bike.
Very good. Very good. I appreciate that. I'm going to show you guys the display now and give you some feedback. I was also trying quickly to get that little rubber thing lined up perfectly, and I didn't earlier. So make sure you do that. Just keeps the battery nice and clean. I think it was it 8 pounds on that battery?
Yep.
7 or 8, something like that. That's back at the specs. I measured all the dimensions. So we turned the bike on a minute ago by holding that power button for a second. It boots up pretty quickly. And then there's a power meter. Oh, look, it just turned off because you leave it for a few minutes. So we turn it on. There's a power meter on the left, and that surges when you're using the throttle or pedaling. We have assist level. It always boots up in level 1, and that throttle is hot, so try not to bump that. A lot of times I'll get on the bike before I turn it on just so I'm more in control. Take it down to 0, the throttle still works. All the way up to level 5, that's going to be the zippiest feeling. Speed, it's in miles per hour right now, but I'll show you how to change that. Odometer, time, trip 1, trip 2, you just press the set button, it cycles through. Battery management, over here it's 52.4 volts, so that's a really precise readout of how full the battery is. And then we also have the 5-tick infographic, 20% increments. I prefer, 10 bars or maybe a percentage, but this is pretty standard in the e-bike industry. No USB charging ports on the display or button pad, and this is not removable, so it might take some more wear and tear at bike racks and in the weather, but it does swivel a little bit if you don't over tighten it. So I think if we hold the plus button here, we get walk mode, which is unique because a lot of times you hold the minus. So it's plus mode for walk mode. Tap the power button to get that backlight going. And then if we hold set for a couple seconds, we get into the menus. There we go. So the first one up here, I think we're clearing the trip distance. I haven't gone through this one as much. Let's see. Oh, miles per hour. So 2 is miles per hour or kilometers per hour. I'm going to leave it at miles per hour. Trip distance, we can clear that down there. And then I think we're cycling now. We're looping, so I'm going to hold set again. So it's not quite as confusing or deep as some of the other drive systems and displays where you actually choose like eco, normal, or power, or any of that other stuff. You're really just going in there to clear the trip stats or change the units. And it has a cool bell, right? Can't complain about that. I think that's good. I might hop on this thing and ride around a little bit, you guys. We rode over here and it was pretty nice. We were on the side of the street, keeping up with cars pretty well because it is a speed pedelec. So for people who commute and stuff, this would be a great option. But do keep in mind, again, with that stem right there, when you're going faster, you just want to make sure everything's dialed in. The same thing with the rack. Over time, it could, loosen up a little bit just based on the vibration of riding. Okay, so I'm in assist level 5. I'm just gonna hit the throttle. There we go. Takes off pretty smoothly. It's really gear dependent. So if you're in a low gear, it's gonna be a little louder and it's gonna zip a little faster. So I'm gonna shift gears over here. Just change my hands up real quick. There we go. Now I'll try it again. We're kind of at our max RPM right here, and it's only 13 miles per hour because we're in the lowest gear. So in order to go faster, you really do have to shift gears. One of the things I call out on some of the fancy e-mountain bike mid-drives is that they have a high RPM support, so high rotations per minute. This one's probably around 100, probably not up to 110 or 120 like those really fancy e-mountain bike motors. But again, it's quiet, it's smooth. You can override that motor at any time with those brake levers. It's a great backup system. And then that light in the back, I really appreciate that. We had no problem climbing the big hills, especially when you're in those low gears. Okay guys, from here you can see that 44 tooth steel chainring. I love that you can see the chain through this, and they got that nice color. It matches so well. Standard 170 millimeter crank arms, forged aluminum alloy. And then back here, it's 11 to 32. I might have misspoke earlier and said 13. So 11, that's a really important sprocket, the smallest one, because it allows you to hit and actually maintain around 28 miles per hour. Most of these e-bikes, they can get there, but you have to work pretty hard. And this one relying predominantly on torque. It's, you know, it's a little bit more active, but that makes it very responsive. So I'm going to try to hit some of those top speeds. I'm going to shift through the gears. You can see the motor. You can hear it in action. Let's do it. A really quiet bike. I got up to 27.2 miles per hour in the highest gear, in the highest level of assist, level 5. And then I rode across the grass and stuff so you could hear the fenders and everything. I'm impressed. I like this motor. I feel like they've done a great job with this bike. So this is a good example of like the climbing power that these bikes are capable of. Again, it's gear dependent, but they really haven't had a problem going up and down these hills. And Wayne's shifting his gears, getting things in order. Looking good, buddy. No problems. Very good. So now if I wanted to shift gears while climbing, I would need to have a little bit of momentum as I do now. I'm still really impressed. This is not insignificant. I'd get a little bit of momentum like this, and then I'm gonna click that high gear like this, pedal a couple strokes, and then the motor kicks back in because I was pedaling gently. And now I'm in the torque, primarily torque activation. Just very smooth, very stable bike. And we get the downhill, get that brake test in just a second. A lot of squeaking going on right now. Might be because it's new. Beautiful, guys. Well, I think this is just wonderful. It's been nice to see all these bikes up close, especially back to back. That's the Geneva, and then what's the other one called? It's the Zurich, right? These are both cities in Europe somewhere, right?
In Switzerland.
In Switzerland. Is that where you have your bank account? Is that your...
No, I wish I did.
For the full written review on specifically the Geneva, I'll see you guys back at ElectricBikeReview.com. Chime in with any feedback you have. Again, it's kind of neat to see a bike that's a speed pedelec and has throttle override and is a mid-drive for sale in that, you know, $2,600 mark. So anyway, love you guys. Ride safe. We'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.